That's big.
Neil, can you remember when the first time when you first heard the Beatles?
Not exactly. I was at art school though. And I seem to remember at that time I was trying to sort of do things with primary colours to see if I could make a red more important than the blue and the yellow on the thing. And I remember sort of Love Me Do being on the radio. I was thinking, that's quite nice. But it definitely, they were around when I was at art school. And I remember when I came to go to London Art School, at Hornsey Art School, they asked me, what I thought of the Beatles. And I thought, it's rather an irrelevant question. So I didn't go there, even though they offered me a place. So it wasn't really, I just thought it was good pop music.
Did it have an impact later? Did you feel that their music got to you at some point?
The one that got to me, I thought, now this is elevating pop music to something else, was in fact the Haircut one, Penny Lane. I thought, that's really good. I really love the images and the production of it. That's the one that really made me first, sit up and listen to them. But before that, it had been sort of rhythm and blues and, good rock and roll.
Did you see them perform in those early days?
No. I mean, obviously I saw them on television or something like that. But, no, I truly wasn't really aware of them until I'd always left and we'd formed the Bonzo Dog Doodah.
Before we get into that, describe...
Mm-hmm. Speed again. You can start again if you want.
If you'd like to go over that last one.
Yeah,
that's fine. Did you see them perform in those early days?
No, not really. I just certainly didn't go to concerts or anything like that. I knew they were around and they were causing a lot of people to scream and things. But no, I was a little sort of above all that, my own little cloistered art school world. It's me. When did they actually stop performing? About 66, wasn't it?
It was later, 66. 67 they did yeah. Did you see them perform in the early days?
No, not live. No, I was too busy being sort of an art student and getting on. I was aware of their music and obviously things on the news about screaming fans and all this sort of thing, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. I thought the songs were, rather good. I thought they deserved to be up at number one where they were.
Describe London in the 60s for me and how the Beatles, where did the Beatles fit into that picture?
Well, I think London in the 60s was rather special because I think that generation of teenagers, if you like, didn't have to go to national service. And so the economic climate was also very good. Harold Macmillan was saying, he never had it so good. And I remember the feeling, he said, well, never mind what job, you can pick a job. So there was this feeling where, people of that age could sort of feel as though they could challenge the establishment, do anything. So, it's our turn to have a go at things. So in that climate, I mean, the Beatles were wonderful because they also, having started off as, four guys in a van, making, agreeable rhythm and blues, this, the songwriting came up and up and up and seemed to echo the times.
Was it that they just came along at the right moment, or do you think Britain did feel that this was someone that they could get behind?
Well, Derek Taylor said a wonderful thing, the Beatles didn't just catch the bus, they were the bus.
A club called the Scotch of St. James.
Scots? Was it the Scots or the Scotch of St. James? No, I don't think I ever went there. Did they play there or something?
Yeah, that was quite big, but that's fine.
Right.
Tell me about the lead up to the band, the Bonzo Dog Doodah band.
Well, we were all at art school in London, and I don't know how we really met, but it was sort of chance meetings that sort of I heard about it from Vernon Dudley Bohe-Noel, who was living in the same house, and he'd met Rodney and Vivian and some other people up at the Royal College of Art, and they used to rehearse every Tuesday night, and they'd already got the name by then, the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. They got that by pulling out things from a hat. Bonzo Dog was this little cartoon character on seaside postcards, and Dada was the anti-art movement of the turn of the century, band being a collection of people. There was other things in there, but Bonzo Dog Dada Band came out, and we soon got tired of trying to explain what a turn of the century anti-art movement was, so we changed it to Doodah. And I first met Vivian in a pub, in an Irish pub in South London, and he was rather plump in those days. He came in through the door wearing Billy Bunter check trousers, a black Victorian frock coat, these horrible little oval violet pince-nez glasses, yeah, and he had a euphonium under his arm, and he also had huge pink rubber false ears. And I thought, well, this is an interesting character. So, I mean, the Bonzos were like that, and we just played in pubs, just sort of as art students, to sort of make some money. But as far as the Beatles going on, that was all part of it. I mean, people were out having a good time in those days, and I suppose trad jazz was as popular as anything else.
It got to a much wider audience. I mean, what was the appeal? Why did people support you? What did they get out of you?
Well, we didn't take it seriously. I think we sort of gently lampooned the more sort of look at me, I'm wonderful showbiz characters that were around, You had things like Sunday Night at the London Palladium. And I remember the Beatles doing the Royal Command Variety Show, and I think John said something like, if you don't want to clap your hands or something, rattle your jewellery or something. And he was always a bit mischievous. But I think everybody loved him for that. Sort of slight irreverence. Well, a lot of irreverence, really.
Is that what you liked?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think generally young people then were sort of like saying, oh, stop going on about the war, to the older generation. And let's live a little, let's try and do this. And of course, we were getting castigated for having long hair and silly clothes. But I mean, the more they made a fuss about it, the more we wore it. Quite mild compared with what goes on today. I mean, any old clothes. I think also significantly, the first sort of generation to sort of make themselves known. I think it was late 50s where somebody coined the word teenager. So, I mean, we seem to think that the word teenager has been with us for years and years and years, but it wasn't. I think it really came into its own around the 60s. And, I think arguably by now, this area, social area, demographic, whatever, has been sort of neatly pigeonholed and targeted quite ruthlessly by people who sell things.
Tell me more about the side of personality of John Lennon. You described there the wit, this side of him that perhaps was revealed over time, or was it there from the beginning? Did you always know that there was something that was different, special, whatever, about John Lennon?
Well, yeah, I think when you saw them, you just knew that there was a sense of, daring mischief. He was a bit like Vivian Stanshall in a way. I mean, or Viv was like him in that there are certain people that can get away with anything, and you got the feeling that John, would do something outrageous like ring up in the middle of an interview.
Okay, just. Yes. Yeah. Neil, did you know from the beginning that there was something different about John Lennon?
I think there was always a sense of mischief about him. I think Vivian Stanshall also had this quality. He could get away with anything. Anybody else, would be outraged. But there's always this sort of sense of fun that I think John had. And also, I think you've got the feeling that he wasn't scared to sort of say what was what. And if you look at it in school days time, I think if anyone was going to drop a balloon full of cold water onto the bully, it would be somebody like John or Vivian. They'd get away with it. And maybe they never lost the sort of sense of fairness, that a 4-year-old has. Most of us sort of become more cynical as time goes by, and you think the world is the way it is, and you can't change it. But, I think John had that quality of, knowing what was fair, what wasn't fair, what was fun, what wasn't fun, and pushing it to the limits.
Did he have a tremendous wit?
Oh, yes, I think so, yeah. I mean, saying something like that, the mind goes completely blank. But, yes, he was. I mean, that was part of it. I mean, you've got the feeling that any given situation, he'd come back with a quick one, too. I mean, the lines in Hard Day's Night are nice, sort of right. I can get you on the stage, oh, really? Yes, it's to the right and down the left and what have you. That was a reconstructed, manufactured thing. But I didn't know him well, personally. I was too shy, in fact, of the opportunities I had to sit down and talk at any length with him. I remember there was a Christmas party at Apple, and we'd done the Magical Mystery Tour or something like that, and there'd been the party for that. I remember the party for the Magical Mystery Tour, the Beach Boys were there, and we got up on stage and we did a 20-minute version of Oh Carol with George on saxophone. And everyone was just having a good time. And similarly, at the Apple Christmas party, there was a room full of children with a Santa and a conjurer and things like that. And my 3-year-old had wandered off into the room where the Hells Angels were and was sitting on a Hells Angel's knee, who was offering him, sips of beer from his little finger. So I thought, so I suppose I was slightly phased, but John and Yoko were sitting on the floor, and John said, "Oh, hello," And I said, "Yeah, hello," right. And I sort of scooped up my son. And really, I would have loved to have had it, spend some time with him, but I never did. I've always regretted that. And even later, when he moved to New York, had the opportunity to go around and see him. But I thought, what do you do? You go knock at the door and say, "Oh, John, I really think your songs are good," or something. No. So everything I know is what I felt about basically him being the working class hero, really.
Let's move on to Python. How did you get involved in the Python?
The Bonzos were invited to do a television show with Eric Idle, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Terry Gilliam, Denise Coffey, and David Jason as well. It was going to be called Do Not Adjust Your Set. And we made 26 of these, and in it you can see the embryonic signs of how Python came about. I mean, Eric and the Terrys were already writing for David Frost and people like that, and they'd done Cambridge Footlights kind of thing. The Bonzos were the Bonzos. They were anarchy, complete anarchy and nonsense and mucking about. So the two together, by the time we finished it, I think Eric, openly sort of suggests that, that they were influenced by working with the Bonzos. And so the Pythons had a sort of anarchic quality too, which meant, you didn't have to look for a punchline or whatever. So I got involved because we finished the end of the children's series, Do Not Adjust Your Set. The Bonzos went to America, and the others started forming Monty Python with John Cleese and Graham Chapman. And, of course, Terry was even doing those wonderful animations in those days, too. And so by the time we came back from America, the Bonzos were sort of disintegrating, stopped arguing, became friends. I thought, why bother? I'd rather do this. And by the time we came back, the Pythons had become Pythons. And Eric Idle rang me up out of the blue one day saying, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just doing a bit of writing and producing, what have you." He said, "Come up to the television centre. Our warm-up man's ill." I said, "I don't do warm-ups." He said, "It's 25 quid. So I said, "Done." So we went off for some supper, and then we started talking about making albums. And it was a lot of fun. And I kind of missed, being in an outfit of sort of fairly wacky and off-the-wall people. And the difference between the Pythons and the Bonzos was the Pythons just had a little bit more kind of control over the wackiness than the Bonzos did. The Bonzos were completely free fall, anarchy and whatnot. If anything new happened in what we did, it was because somebody thought of something that might put somebody else off. And if it got a laugh, it stayed in. So.
throw the Beatles into that mix, and how would you describe the way perhaps Python, the Bonzos, and the Beatles intersect? There might be a common thread. How would they intersect?
Well, yes, we're all contemporaries in a way. The Beatles had stopped touring by the time the Bonzos actually went in to make their first record. I remember we went to Abbey Road to make a thing called My Brother Makes the Noises for the Talkies, which is a kind of old 30s thing. My brother makes the noises for all the talkies. There's not a single noise that he can't do. There's lots of guns going off and cats meowing and liners leaving dock and all sorts of things like that. And funnily enough, I'd been down the corridor and I came back and there against the sunlit doors, were four figures in silhouette, mop-top figures in dark suits and sunglasses. I thought, yes, it's the Fabs, isn't it? Yeah. Of course, they record here too, And I snuck down the corridor and to hear what they were doing. And I heard George's song, I want to tell you, if you don't know why. And that wonderful sort of F over the E7. And I thought, this is really great. This is cutting edge stuff. And then went back into our little place and we're going, My Brother Makes the Noises for the Talkie. But so we were just going out and doing this kind of thing. And they were sort of going their own way, much more in the studio. And we have to, thank them or blame them, if you like, for the concept album, but more importantly, multi-track recording, because they virtually pioneered it, putting four-track machines together to get 16 tracks. I mean, now you've got 24-track machines linked up to other 24-track machines. But they were at the cutting edge of it all, and in the studio. I dare say if they'd been around, if the stuff had been around then, as it is now, they probably would have, got in a car.
Hurtled down the street.
Yeah, got in the van again and performed live, because you can do all the orchestral things. Anyway, I'm waffling around the question, but we met up with them to do Magical Mystery Tour, because we were on the road with the Scaffold quite a bit, and Paul McCartney's brother Michael was in the Scaffold, and he suggested to Paul, why don't you get the Bonzos in Magical Mystery Tour? And the thing was, Viv used to hang out with both Paul and John, and it was because Viv was hanging out with Paul, and in fact Paul came to produce the Urban Spaceman. So we sort of interlocked in that way, and we were already working with the people who then became Python. You see what I mean? It was just sort of, you bumped into each other. It was the 60s.
What about sensibility-wise? How all the minds sort of like?
I can only speak personally. I just sort of, drifted from one situation to another. Sort of, if I analysed anything, it was what was ever going on at the time. And that was a wonderful freedom about it. You didn't feel you had to target anybody. I don't think anybody thought about targeting anybody. It's what felt right. It was, you did it. You didn't think, well, will I upset anybody? Or will we get more people if we do this? You don't. You just do what makes you laugh and your friends laugh. And you build up a kind of sense of values in that way, rather than having any kind of analysis on any given situation. The 60s were a good time to be young, because you felt that's all you had to be. I dare say it probably feels the same now, but I think, it's a little bit more, making footprints in the snow. There weren't so many other footprints in the snow. Now it looks like a rather badly worked metaphor.
Where is your place in Beatles myth and history?
My place? Well, I don't know. The thing was that the opportunity of making All You Need Is Cash, the Ruttles, sort of came about by accident as well. I was doing a show with Eric called Rustling Weekend Television, and he wrote skits and I wrote musical ideas. And one of the things where I thought cheap and cheerful to do a parody of Hard Day's Night. And Eric had an idea for a documentary maker who was so boring that the camera ran away from him. We showed this on Saturday Night Live, and before I knew where we were, could I write 20 more Ruttle songs by next Thursday lunchtime? So I sort of agreed to do this because George was sort of very keen on it too. And you have to remember at that time there was real pressure for the Beatles to get back together again. And I'd always felt, there was too much hysteria. The hurly-burly had got out of control in a way. I kind of, in my own way, wanted to say, hey, wait a minute, everybody. This is just 4 guys who got in the van because they like rock and roll, and they happened to write some pretty good songs, and the kind of weirdness that was going on about, this is so important to everybody. I thought it would be fun, to sort of remind everybody how this sort of thing starts. Also tell the story, pretty tongue-in-cheek. And I'm pretty sure that's where George thought it would be fun as well. Let's demystify this. Can't we all start again? Can't we just sort of tone the hysteria down? So I thought Ruttles was worthwhile doing that. Just to sort of, again, no more than a gut instinct, really. Just anything that wasn't quite Beatley enough. I used to say, well, it doesn't matter, we're the Ruttles. We're, so lazy, really. But I mean, everybody on the Ruttles, from people running around in Liverpool to actors, musicians, everybody knew the story. It was wonderful. You didn't really need a script because everybody knew the story. I mean, the Beatles were so huge in everybody's lives. And, when was that? By then, John had, I think, was thinking about putting out that last album he did with David Geffen's organisation. But we'd done the city centre in New York. I'd done it with Python around 76. Yes, 76, because it was the bicentenary of the revolution, or whatever.
You touched on something there, and that was, bursting this balloon, if you like, of the myth of the Beatles. I mean, everyone was waiting, were they not, for the Beatles to somehow get back together again.
Yeah.
And that's what Britain wanted, and along you came. Do you think it did burst the bubble for them to a certain point?
Not enough. I think it wasn't just Britain wanting them back together. The whole world wanted them back together again. I mean, this is probably the first time, any sort of strummers had sort of had this kind of influence over the world. I mean, I remember people behaving in a very childish way, at government level about things. They were the great and the good were getting terribly sort of like pompous and wagging their fingers about, this kind of thing. But it didn't matter. It's like people felt, this was a chance to sort of stop some of the unfairness going on in the world. And John certainly focused people's attention on it. I mean, no one can take away anything from the song Imagine. I mean, that is going to last and last and last for as long as human beings walk the planet and care about other human beings. It's nothing will ever take that away. Nothing.
The Ruttles, did it become more than what you had anticipated it starting off at?
Well, I'm rather proud in a way that the Ruttles, when it was shown on primetime television, was actually the lowest rating show that ever appeared on primetime. It came a splendid 65th out of 65. I think Charlie's Angels won. But no one really picked up at it. It was joke bypass in the early days. It was only later that, when it came out on video, I think that people just started to say, hang on, I get the joke. Because I suppose everyone was too hotly involved in the really hoping that the Beatles would get back together again. And of course, you can't. It's like Simone de Beauvoir saying, let the butterfly go. If you have it in your hand, you'll kill it. But I mean, it was crazy. I mean, Lorne Michaels was running this wonderful gag on Saturday Night Live, because somebody had offered $3 million and a killer whale or something like that to anyone who could get the Beatles back together again. So he was offering $3,000, and they got George Harrison on and waved the money in front of him, saying, George, this could be yours if you get the guys back together, And he said, what, is it all for me? He said, no, you have to share it with the others, Maybe you don't have to tell Ringo, that kind of joke. And that's how Eric got to host the show, because they said, he said he could get the Beatles back together again for $300. It was all, you know, good fun, and nobody really thought it would go anywhere other than it seemed a good idea at the time. Like I said, no one was really analysing anything or focusing anything, focus grouping or targeting. It's sort of quite innocent fun, really.
How did that play out? How did it see its course?
Well, it happened. It was very intense. Gary Weiss was brilliant. He shot the thing from the shoulder or the hip. So it had this wonderful documentary feel. Technically, I think it's rather splendid. We got Neil Aspinall, you know, and the others, you know, let us use other footage. You know, there's real Beatle footage in there, matched in with our footage. In a way, it was done as a semi-official biography, if you like, tongue-in-cheek, with sort of, if you like, typical Liverpool humour, you know, not taking itself too seriously. And it took a long while for that, you know, to really sink into the psyche of the people who were, you know, for one reason or another, you know, sort of getting, you know, sleepy and dewy-eyed. But of course, then the events of 1980, that's 2 years after the Ruttles. I mean, I think it's taken a long, long time for people to see everything in perspective. But that's why I did it. I thought, you know, nobody should go through this kind of heat and fame. I mean, the songs are good enough on their own. It's the music that counts with the Beatles. You know, the personality and all the nonsense and the knees bent running about behaviour and screaming. That's not important. It's the music.
Your role in it, I mean, was it kind of like odd doing that role?
I have to say, I didn't particularly want to do the John role. I didn't particularly like the name Ron Nasty. But next to Michael Palin, I suppose I'm sort of labelled as, you know, the nice one. You know. But some people say, you know, you don't get anywhere in the world being nice. You know, but I think I've proved to the world you don't get anywhere in the world being nasty either.
I mean, who was Ron Nasty?
A lot of it was me trying not particularly hard to be John, but every now and again I thought, what would John say here? Because we ad-libbed an awful lot, you know. So that bit about, you know, what do you want to spend your money on or something was the inane question. You have to remember it was quite good in its lampooning of the documentaries of the day, you know. And I remember saying, oh, I'd like to buy a squadron of tanks. And partly, you know, I thought, it was weird because I wasn't trying desperately hard to be John, but I was just trying to sort of have John's attitude to things. So, and I thought that's all I needed to do, really. I'm not really an actor or such, but I mean, it was fun to just sort of get into another character in a way that you knew, you admired, was mischievous, probably be more daring than you were. Certainly a better songwriter. And a bit like Rod Hull and Emu, who used to be a character who had this rather mischievous bird on his hand, and this bird would do outrageous things, you know, but he couldn't do it without the bird, you know. So you needed the kind of the dressing up element of putting a mop top wig on and running around to sort of come out with the ad libs, really. But as I say, everyone knew it. Everyone knew the story. I mean, it was deeply embedded in everybody's, you know, psyche. You know, that 4 lads can get in a van, go to Hamburg, come back, write a few songs, you know, get turned down by a few record companies, and then, you know, go on a blitz of a career, which has never been rivaled. But I mean, that it has its downsides as well. I think, you know, you can have too much fame and too much sort of responsibility for other people's lives and happiness, you know, because they, you know, dump that on you, and as event shows, you know, it is too much, and it's ultimately dangerous. It's dangerous for the people who give up their individuality into somebody else and, you know, become fanatics. It's dangerous for them. It's also dangerous for the subjects of it.
Did you ever discover what John Lennon thought of the Ruttles?
Only third hand. I mean, I gather somebody saw him in the street in New York and said, what do you think of the Ruttles, John? And his response was to sing Cheese and Onions.
What traits did you pick up in parodying Lennon?
Some of them are just visual, like in All You Need Is Love, or Love Life, as we put it. I noticed he was chewing gum in the film, so I chewed gum. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, once I'd written the songs, and I knew they were sufficiently similar and different at the same time, the real copying was in the production. And of course, if you wear the clothes, you're halfway there, and you've only got to sort of change a few things, and because everybody knows the joke. This is really the secret of. Don't start me being pompous about comedy. But one of the things that make comedy work is that people understand the situation, and so with the Ruffles, everyone understood the situation.
I was just stopped. Just. What was Cheese and Onions?
What was it? I don't know. I mean, it was a song. It was a Ruffles song. I mean, it sort of lampoons, sort of like trying to put too much serious philosophy into a song, really. But Cheese and Onions, it's the stock sandwich, crisp flavour. I don't know. I don't know why. I just sort of, cheese and onions. Do I have to spell it out? Because I knew I was on a pretty slim bit of ice, saying I've always thought in the back of my mind cheese and onions. I've always thought that the world was unkind. Cheese and onions. Do I have to spell it out? And then going CHEESEAND, etc. But I, at the same time, you see, I put in what you can't argue with, really. I mean, if you keep screwing around with fossil fuels and taking no notice of your environment, ultimately, you're going to have trouble. So that sentiment back then in the late 70s of man and machine, keep yourself clean or be a has-been like the dinosaur, it's still true today, and it's probably becoming true. So that part of writing, trying to get the essence of what the Beatles songs were about was, I wanted to make it as serious as possible. I didn't want to trivialize anything. The job was to make people laugh, but at the same time, I don't think you make people laugh by just trivializing. Or you want to laugh with. You need to laugh with, not laugh at. So I think any musician, would sort of, have a few beers, they'd get up and do a Tony Bennett or mimic somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So it was in that spirit. But that was just one. Did you mean what was Cheese and Onions in terms of what was it supposed to be like in Beatles things? I mean, no. Well, I mean, it suited the Yellow Submarine era for us. And, whereas Piggy in the Middle was obviously magical mystery tour kind of country. That was the job of the first Ruffles album, was to be like signposts, if you like, for the story. So we had to have things like Ouch and some psychedelic kind of stuff. That was easier to write, actually. It's a lot easier to write than sort of trying to remember what your first teen dates were, like the angst of them. She's looking at him now, or something like that. And the second album, Archaeology, was much more measured from my point of view in terms of, it was more of a personal tribute to, the Beatles' music. And quite deliberate. I wouldn't have gone ahead with the project, even though I was having my arms twisted by all sorts of people, had it not been for the, I wanted to write a sort of song that wasn't too heavy, but at the same time didn't dodge the issue of what happened to John. So I wrote the song Questionnaire, and it deliberately comes in lightweight, and then hopefully ends up with, tell me what you think about how easy it can be to buy a gun. Do you think it's crazy, half crazy, or not crazy at all? Don't ask me, I'm just a questionnaire. That's and together with other things in it, and I signed it off with back in '64, and the lyric thing. This is so long, it's all over. And it should be, but it won't ever be because the songs go on. The music is the thing.
Getting back to John's recognition, if you like, of what your work was on the Ruttles, did that give you a thrill that he had, that he obviously knew about it, obviously appreciated it to a certain degree?
John was quite a Bonzo fan, I mean, in fact, he wasn't alone. I mean, lots of people who are sort of straight musicians, if you like, serious musicians, really envied the Bonzos because they could muck about. I remember Eric Clapton saying this, I wish I could muck about just once or twice. He said, I'd love to come on stage with a stuffed parrot on my shoulder. But when you've got posters saying, Clapton is God, the stuffed parrot is right out. Got no chance. So, we were lucky in a way because we weren't trying to do the business as professionals, and we were just art students having a good time. So that's why we burnt out in 5 years. But you could argue so did the Beatles, but what burnt them out was, sort of over adoration, if you like. It became impossible to go anywhere. We couldn't even hear the music because people were screaming, This is weird. I mean, as I say, for the Ruttles to help diffuse all that, I felt was worth a go.
Do you think it did diffuse it?
Not enough. It did in a small circle of people, but more widely, I think there was more. There are Beatle fans now who weren't alive when the Beatles were there. So I think the new generation of people who appreciate the Beatle music can also piece in what the Ruttles did as a piece of history, contemporary history at that time, which sort of makes sense. And as Paul, helped me with Urban Spaceman and things like that, I like to think I've given a little bit back in terms of, perception of the pain, if you like, of the thing. And sort of saying, like that, we've all got to take responsibility for ourselves, really. We can't dump it on some sort of hero. They are good heroes.
What did you admire as a musician or about John Lennon's songwriting talents?
Clarity of mind. Really, I mean, he had some stunningly, vivid and uncluttered. Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight. It's not the kind of bumpty bump line you would immediately associate with a song, but it's a brilliant line. And if anything, when I try to write songs now, I keep having to go back and say, what am I trying to say here? Is there a better way of saying it? It takes me much longer to write stuff. I mean, some of the best songs I've written, but I've written remarkably quickly. But I mean, maybe as you get older, you get more sort of, you're on the side of a cliff, whereas you didn't know you were on the side of a cliff, and you thought, well, that would do. Maybe you could argue you go too far the other way, you're too critical, and you won't let things go out. The freedom of saying, sod it, this is what I say. But I mean, John had that clarity of mind, and he had the courage to sort of have the opinion. He also had humour. He was full of the mischief and daring, and anger, and love. Just like anybody else, it's a muddle. And he was particularly good at articulating all those emotions.
His life took not a strange path, but I mean that from where he came from with the Beatles, then Yoko Ono, and then America. I mean, what do you think that life pattern was that took him on this course? What his desire was, what his need was in life?
Cool. I would imagine he was trying to get some kind of normality into his life. What they went through in those days was not normal. No one had really trodden that path before. So for some people to say, is this, this may look bizarre from the outside, but from the inside it might look like the most comforting thing you could do at the time. You need some refuge from this glare, this never-ending glare, and air of expectancy that you were probably going to be able to cure all the world's ills, just by turning up somewhere. And it must be a terrible pressure. It must be like being on an ocean cruise or something like that. So everywhere you go, you have to sort of smile. You're trapped in this bubble, this hideous kind of scrutiny.
How did Britain react when John fell in love with Yoko Ono?
I don't think they reacted too well, actually. But I don't like the idea of saying how Britain reacted. I think a certain element of Beatle fans felt, I dare say Harold Macmillan was unmoved. So, yes, a certain element of Beatle fans probably thought, this is breaking up the Beatles or something. But never mind what poor Cynthia thought, or what Julian thought. It's, these are the casualties of show business career, if you like. I don't want to go down as a pundit of what the Britain nation thought about Yoko. I don't think about these things.
Did you ever meet her with him? Was there anything you observed that was like a normal relationship, a love, or whatever? Did you see any of that?
I only sort of met them, and again, not really met them at the I only ever met them at the Savile Row Christmas party that year. We were sat on the floor in a room full of Hell's Angels, and I was trying to find my 3-year-old son. So, no, I couldn't say I was that close with either John or Yoko. But Yoko did. It was intimidating, to the whole thing. So my natural shyness came to the fore, and I sort of made my excuses in there.
Lennon, 1980. I think it was December 8th. Where were you leading up to that day when he was shot? Do you remember your life at that point?
Well, yeah, I do, but I sort of don't really like the idea of being part of the montage of people's memories. But I don't mind sharing the fact that I was doubly shocked because I was staying with Terry Jones at the time, and I came down for breakfast, and it was my birthday, and I was going to say, "Hey Terry, it's my birthday. Let's go and do something." And I came into the kitchen, and Terry Jones was in tears, saying they shot John Lennon. But yeah, I remember the day.
What happened then after for you? That after that impact?
Well, I think shocked and stunned. I don't know what I thought. What do you think? None really. I was never a fanatic fan of the Beatles. Just admired his craftsmanship, his sense of fun, and his courage in what he took on. And okay, he may have been silly at times. Growing your hair and hopping about in a bag. But in a way, that's wonderful sort of satire of the kind of stupid antics that were going on. He really did. He belongs in Tate Modern as much as he does in the Hall of Fame at Cleveland. And Yoko's influence on that was, I think, quite good. They were the sort of embryonic Damien Hirst and Tracy Emin's of their day. Happenings in a bag. Come on. It's again, so what do you got? What else are you going to do? You're going to get up or you can hopefully go to the House of Lords or something like that. It's just like these things are just. I remember feeling just as shocked when I heard on the news that a little girl was waiting outside the chemist in some little town in Bedfordshire, and the lorry had come through, and the wheel had come off the lorry, and it bounced across the pavement and crushed her to death. It's sort of, why? And who can explain? I don't know. I don't know how I don't want to. I don't want to try and sort of articulate any kind of reason for that.
I mean, was there ever, I mean, you've moved in the kind of celebrity circle, if you like, for so many years. Did it cross your mind, dawn on you that something like this could happen? I mean, moving near the circle of the Beatles and what you had done, I mean, did it set you back on your heels so much? Was there ever a thought that something like this could happen?
Not before, no, but then the shockwave certainly set in. She suddenly realised that there were people out there amongst the fanatic element who, with sufficient problems of their own, could do something arguably as unspeakable as that. And I don't know, in this great soup of human consciousness, how these things happen. Time to time I look around the world and I get fed the news stories everybody else does, and I also get fed up with hearing it. And then because I can't do anything about these things, you get brutalised by too much information. And I think since 1980, it's going more and more that way. We've got so much information to deal with. I really don't know how you make judgments of why more people aren't crazy, or are there very few people who are sane. Which way round is it? Who's going to measure it? I mean, you can even sort of measure a duvet by its tog rating. I mean, I think it's, at times I feel, have I been born into a species I have nothing to do with? Sometimes I do. So I try and live every day. Yes, there's all sorts of likelihoods of things happening. The appalling attack that was made on George just recently. It's scary. And I don't know that you can appeal to anybody to sort of tone down this kind of cynical marketing of mass audience hysteria, which goes on now. I mean, people are working very hard to build acts up to the height of the Beatles because they think it's good, because it makes money or something. People should just work on making music good. And fans should grow up. And fame should be played down as well. It's rubbing along together what it's about. I mean, a songwriter shouldn't be treated any more importantly than a plumber, because both can do a job for you. That's just what I think.
Did you try in the days after that Lennon was shot to remember him somehow? Was there something personal for you that you did to pay homage, if you like, to him?
Well, I made sure that that as much as I could without being sort of maudlin or whatever. I think, as I said, the Some Questionnaire is a little tribute to John, and also another song, In a Kleiner Middle Class of Music, because I didn't actually write that especially for archaeology. I had that in a show I wrote about Alice being in Nowadays. It was the third Alice, if you like. It was called More Jam Tomorrow. And I invented this character called the Working Class Heron. It's basically a typing error. But he sang In a Kleiner Middle Class of Music. And it was all part of Alice sort of looking at Nowadays and wondering whether it was Wonderland, or whether it was Through the Looking Glass, or what it was. Because I think arguably if you take an objective look at what we're all doing today, and it's like, there's a fight down one end of the playground, we all rush down there, or the cameras rush down there. Oh no, wait a minute, there's something else at this end. And it's all at this kind of frantic level. Maybe I'm just getting old.
What was lost that day when Lennon was shot?
Well, a life, the rest of a life, the rest of a creative working life. You've got to put it in perspective with all the other kind of life and death situations that happen around the world. Why we're sitting here talking about what makes that a loss more than another is because the program is dealing with John. But I don't know. I wouldn't like to speculate on what was lost. No. I think it kind of renews. Something is lost and something replaces it. And if it turns out to be a more objective and less hysterical, more reasoned appreciation of what John did, see when he was being a clown, see when he was making a point. He always used to say it's the music. The only good thing that came out of the Beatles was the music. The business, the hysteria, all that was not so good, really. Sort of doesn't help anyone to sort of drive people to think that way. Ultimately, it's pretty dangerous, like football hooliganism. It's too big. It's too big to do in a little soundbite.
His killer is up for parole this year, first time in 20 years. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't understand, why, anybody could do that. All I know is that some people do, and I don't know what drives them to do it. Whether it's a legal matter or a health matter, I don't know. I don't know how legal systems really work, other than it's supposed to protect the community at large. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm sorry, but I don't know, sort of judge anybody. He could have been out of his mind. I'd have said he was out of his mind. Whether or not you let somebody out, it all depends on the circumstances of what he is like now. If he is truly, sort of has remorse, then he's got to live with having done something horrible for the rest of his life. And if he doesn't know that, then it doesn't really make any difference where he is, except that if it was a risk, he should obviously not be allowed out. Well, I suppose somebody who's qualified will make those judgments. But basically, I don't understand what lawyers do, why they cost so much money. But I do understand the principle of it, and that's to sort of protect society. So Did he know what he was doing? Does he still? Is he sorry? I mean, I'll have to weigh those things up. But not something I'm in a position to do.
Do you think there would be a rush of emotion if he was indeed let go?
I think whatever happens, the media is going to behave in its usual disgraceful way.
I don't think there's any chance that this guy will get out in a million years, or whatever. But is there anything that you would like to add? Is there anything that you'd like to say about the? We've covered the Ruttles. We've covered the.
The purpose for the Ruttles really was, just.
Okay, yeah, just a couple of things. What's your favourite Lennon song?
I think I'm Looking Through You. Was that his?
I'm looking through. Why the word? What?
Oh, the tune and the words. Yeah, but it has that lovely line. Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight.
I'm sorry.
Why, tell me, why do you not treat me right? Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight. Great.
The working class hero image, I guess, that John Lennon had, could you describe that for us? Could you describe his appeal on that level?
I think he had a very good take. I mean, that's his phrase, isn't it? A working class hero is someone to be. And at the best of writers, like Shakespeare, he's coined a phrase, a working class hero. And so the 60s is sprinkled with them. I mean, like David Bailey, the photographer. It was a chance to knock the British class system aside for a while. And I suppose that was what was so invigorating about the time. So again, he's given us something, working class hero. Something I can send up with a working class hero.
Why did he matter more?
Flat cap and a yellow nose like that.
Why did he matter more than other pop stars of that time?
He had depth. I mean, and I don't mean sort of the usual pop, deeply shallow depth. It was real stuff. I think he was always, a painter, artist at heart, and saw. So that's probably why I have an affinity with him, because he went to art school and heard the same rubbish. Because, I mean, anybody else that's going through art school, they need to read Tom Wolfe, The Painted Word, and that really sorts it all out, art in the 20th century and beyond. And so he'd gone through that art speak nonsense, and I'd gone through it at art school, and I could see where he was coming from a lot of the time. And that's why I warmed to him, and then some of the true ironies of what he was doing, not the kind of modern irony which sort of is confused with sarcasm, but the genuine irony of doing something that was on one level, and on another level, somebody would pick up on it. So he always had this double thing. And coming from Liverpool, there's no disadvantage in that, because Liverpool is the home of all wonderful comedians. The city itself has a great sense of humour and philosophy. And it's not kind of rosy-tinted pink, sort of home counties kind of view of life. It's quite hard. A lot of fun and truth in it. So coming from there, it's a wonderful mixture. I mean, the 60s, the others, Paul was brilliant as a musician. George as a thinker and also a musician. And Ringo being the loud one, the noisy one, I beg your pardon. What a ruffle thing. But the chemistry of things were right. And I don't know, on that side of it, the music will last forever.
Down to earth, but he wasn't exactly the Flat Cap Brigade, was he?
No, but he identified the genre, if you like, because it was almost, sort of people coming up. I mean, you've got Willie Russells, you've got the, the boys from the Black Stuff. The other writer.
Yes, and I can't help. Oh God.
What's his name?
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I know. Well.
Sorry.
No, let's go.
Yeah. So down to earth, but not exactly the Flat Cap Brigade.
No, because the Flat Cap Brigade is almost like the handicap between the wars idea of the working class. John added to it, because it was possible for people to actually go out into the arts, into university, go on to politics if they so wanted to, become photographers. So the climate of the 60s, a working class hero, it's lovely. It's kind of a bittersweet thing. But Britain has suffered, terribly a bit from this class system and this kind of middle classness, which everyone aspires to, like having Soviet things or. Whereas I think some lord or other was in Bond Street and stopped up short and looking in a jeweller's window and said, "Good God, what are they?" And his butler said, "They're Soviet rings." I said, "What are they for?" But and on the other hand, you've got this kind of, we'll bow and scrape and all this kind of thing, and we're lucky to have this, and there's kind of reverse snobbery. The British class system is dreadful, but as you've got it in America too. But it's more cut and dried. You either have money or you don't. But it's remarkably subtle in England, and John was cutting through that by the bittersweet observation of being working class, but being a hero as well. Also, a lot of people went to war, and that was traumatizing for my parents' generation. And as I deal with, people who are 84 now who went through the war, in fact, it's only just coming out, just how traumatizing it was. So everybody in their lives, knows this pain and has a need for poetry. And yeah, John supplied that. There's poetry in his soul, art, art for art's sake, for being a human being, to express what it's like being a human being, not to express what it's like to have material things or.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with German.
Finally, go, all right, we'll do it. I'll try and make it rounded off in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my own version of what you're trying to do here.
Mm. That must have been amazing doing those 20 songs in a week.
Well, it wasn't quite a week, but it was getting close on. The album only took 10 days. We rehearsed for 2 weeks in a little semi-detached house in Hendon, and just played it live into two Revoxes, which are just 2-track machines. And by the time it came out, it really felt like a group.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in the studio and just steamed into it. But yeah, it took me about 3 months for that.
The Ruttles, were they treading on sacred text, the Beatles, do you think?
Our attitude wasn't like that, all right, we may have been fools and angels who have trodden or not trodden, but the idea was really to sort of demystify it a little bit, to take away, to remind people of the humour of what can happen to anybody, so many people want to be millionaires these days, that's not the same thing as writing wonderful songs that people take to their hearts. And I've always had this theory, you see, if a hit has 1 million sales, it's not, the 1 million people who bought it are not an entity. It's because it meant something to one person at a time. And I only, as a songwriter, think about what meaning one person at a time. So it's great. So by sort of reverse thing, if it sells a lot of records, but that's the only way you're going to know that many people cared enough about that thing that you've written that's supposed to mean something to them to go out and buy it. It's like the money isn't the driving force, for me anyway. I wrote a song called We Are the Slaves of Freedom, which you could arguably say is in a sort of like Leninist, area, because it's playing with words and sort of looking at the wider picture of how we live. And I heard on the internet that some 18-year-old in America sang it unaccompanied to his high school. And I go, yeah, that's what being a songwriter is all about.
How did Lennon affect you on that level? And we'll wait for the plane to go. And
Well, I liked some of his jokes. I mean, that funny book he brought out. I loved them. Having done Latin at school, I loved that. A marmoset, a marmalade, a minibus. I knew exactly where he was coming from there, because I mean, at that age, a lot of the humour is still sort of pure art, and I had to look back, and I dare say, the Beatles look back at some of the early days as it being their infantilia. It is, the stuff you do when you're young, and so when he plays around with words, I mean, he lost me a couple of times on sort of like yelling and screaming a bit, same way that. Like Zappa lost me a few times when Zappa does melodies and, does that. I'm right there. I really love that. I don't like it going wobbling off into sort of freeform too much. So he lost me a few times, but for the most part, it was just delightful. As I say, he was picking up on the sort of things that I used to get at art school, sort of wonderful, pretentious things that said about art. And he used to be able to cut through it, and every time we did, I used to, sort of go, yes. There's another, because people do take them terribly seriously. So am I suppose. Yes, if it went for aeroplanes, cigarettes, and being pompous, I'd be perfect.
What is John Lennon's legacy?
John Lennon's legacy. What is John Lennon's legacy? He teaches you never to trust a journalist.
I haven't done anything bad to you.
I never said you did.
Yeah, that was very accusatory, wasn't it? I'm thinking, hello.
No, I mean, that's sort of, I don't understand. I don't want to do sound bites like that.
All right, then that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. The one thing actually that I just, you said it was your birthday the day it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real.
Well, don't, because I mean, people pick up on these things, and it's
I just suddenly sunk into me. Right, that's fine. If you don't want to go there,
dead for ages, honestly.
That's fine. Then that's fine. If you don't want to go.
Well, I thought, I thought twice about mentioning it for that very reason.
No, it's just suddenly that I that went inside me, and it just hit me. That's all. But let's not go there. That's fine.
Bad enough that thing on the internet, sort of mentioning the fact that that I did happen to unguardedly remark, because Ollie died, the fourth Russell.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of spooky that there was only three of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these things when they come out of context look horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They truly do.
Well, we didn't explain that. You did on that bit, how you explained it. And if you're cool with what you have said already about that, then that's fine. We don't have to.
I just,
go there again.
That's how it was. I came down to, hey, it's my birthday.
Because that is.
Mr. John Lennon's been shot, and that was it.
Right. I mean,
I
that is.
I don't think there's much more to add.
Okay. I think we've pretty much covered it, Brian. How do you feel?
No. You okay?
Do you have a favorite hotel in LA when you go there?
Sunset Marquis.
Sunset Marquis, oh.
Yeah. Is it yours?
No, it's we lived in the hills right above the strip for a long time. And the Bell Lodge was our headquarters.
Oh yeah.
All the rock and roll acts used to stay in the Chateau Marmont. We get the big British contingent out in Santa Monica now. Something called Turn Me On in the 60s. It was a very self-based English country schoolboy devoted to ragtime. Ian Whitcomb. Oh, the name sounds good. I know, but he was part of the British X-Factor cricket team. Oh, yeah.
They have a soccer football team.
We celebrated New Year's at the Big Surf Club down there at 4 p.m. At midnight here.
All Malaga for Brit Paddy.
And there's an hour that Eric goes to where they import beer. Oh yeah. I've seen cake. I think it's the King with the King Fed.
They're a couple of things.
There's the other side of that.
Yeah, I'm really.
It's a bit of Wimbledon Tone, bus track.
Spending so much time together, I started to think to myself, this isn't going to last much longer, and they're going to break up.
What burnt them out was, sort of over-adoration, if you like. It became impossible to go anywhere. They couldn't even hear the music, because people were screaming,
The Beatles weren't just created at the cutting edge. They also were probably the first band to ever...
Perhaps why the other guys would have felt, hold on, we're the Beatles, we're 4, we shouldn't be 5.
Yes, a certain element of Beatle fans probably thought, this is breaking up the Beatles or something. But never mind what poor Cynthia thought, or what Julian thought. I mean, it's, this is the casualties of show business career, if you like.
I think at the time the media were absolutely scandalised by their relationship.
Showbiz thing, and still seemed to be an all-right kind of guy.
If you look at it in school days time, I think if anyone was going to drop a balloon full of cold water onto the bully, it would be somebody like John. I think John had that quality of, knowing what was fair, what wasn't fair, what was fun, what wasn't fun, and pushing it to the limits.
I think what appealed to me about John was that, he was...
He was always a bit mischievous, but I think everybody loved him for that. Sort of slight irreverence. Well, a lot of irreverence, really.
No, but I'm not saying that we're better or greater or comparing us with Jesus Christ as a...
John at 11:15, so we were about half to 2/3 of the way back when John was killed.
I sort of don't really like the idea of being part of a montage of, people's memories, but I don't mind sharing the fact that I was doubly shocked because I was staying with Terry Jones at the time, and I came down for breakfast, and it was my birthday.
I think one of Elton's crew called me up and told me what, mainly because it just didn't add up. What's the point?
And I was going to say, hey, Terry, it's my birthday, let's go and do something. And I came into the kitchen and Terry Jones was in tears and saying, they shot John Lennon. But yeah, I remember the day.
I was in Switzerland and...
What people were thinking and helped to realise what you knew.
Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight. It's not the kind of bumpty-bumpty-bumpty-bump line you would immediately associate with a song, but it's a brilliant line. Everybody in their lives, knows this pain and has a need for poetry. And John supplied that. There's poetry in his soul.
The ironic thing about it was that he was playing good music again when it happened,